Namaste guys, welcome along to another Thoughtful Thursday. My name is Jayadharma and I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes or so leading you through a guided meditation, guided relaxation, and a short talk on some aspects of the mind, and we'll finish off with a little bit of kirtan, a mantra meditation technique that is used in the Bhakti Yoga system. So I just invite you to perhaps get relaxed, get comfortable, whatever that means for you. Sit against a wall or in a chair or lie down and maybe close your eyes. And if you can hear this really pretty, soothing, relaxing music in the background, just focus your mind on that and allow your body to soften completely. Your eyes very peacefully closed, your shoulders relaxed, your face soft and warm. Your belly tension-free. You just let the cares of the day just melt away, at least somewhat, as you bring now your attention to your breathing. You're just breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. There is no need to force it. It has to be relaxed, unforced and unstrained, particularly if you've just recently eaten. And you bring your focus to the music, to the breath, my instructions, and just rest in those three platforms as the muscles in your body soften and your breath starts to take on a rhythmic nature. As you breathe in, the belly gently swells and that expansionary sort of feel just floats to the rib cage and of course to the ribs, to the chest, and all the way up to the clavicles. And the exhalation is a deflation of all those areas. The music just washing over you, bringing you some peacefulness. As you step back a little from this experience and just observe your body breathing now, like a dispassionate witness, just breathing, being aware that my body is inhaling and exhaling. And drawing a little further back, right, we begin to look at the mind. You've been watching this video for a short period of time. You may be familiar with me, you may not be familiar with me. It doesn't really matter, right? But you can recall some aspects of what you've been watching for the last few minutes, because that's the nature of the mind. The mind and its contents are a function of what is fed into it via the senses. In this case, our eyes have taken in some images, and there they are. You're looking at them on the screen of your mind. It doesn't matter how much detail, it doesn't matter what the image is really. This is just convenient because that's what we're doing at the moment. The point of this is to really reflect on and ask yourself, who is observing this image? After all, your eyes are closed. Yeah, your eyes are closed. There is some perception going on that you cannot deny. And that is the beginning of the yoga system. Who is that perceiver? Who am I? You just watch your thoughts now. You put that image aside, and you just let things flow through the mind, whatever they are. We're not trying to control them. We're not trying to empty the mind of any thoughts that would not be possible. We just observe them. We don't try and block them, alter them, bend or shape them in any form. Just like a patron in a cinema, just watching what is placed before you. And the point of this practice is to get you in touch with, and as you practice this mindfulness, this ancient mindfulness practice in the future, maintain an understanding that I am this silent viewer of the mind, deep, somewhere within. I don't really know, right? I don't really know who I am, but this is interesting. I haven't heard this before. Despite the fact that in my language, my day-to-day language, I say my mind is giving me grief, my body is, I have a pain in my body somewhere, my stomach or my tooth or my knee. I forget that there is that possessive pronoun, the my, the me. Right? I've never asked myself, who am I, before? It's an unusual question for me. But it is thought-provoking, to say the least, and very interesting, yeah. Just relaxing there. Perhaps you've established a bit of a rhythm with the breath, and you're enjoying it. Because as you breathe in a more focused fashion, of course, you draw in more oxygen. All the bodily systems start to recognize the presence of oxygen, particularly the heart and the brain. The heart slows, and everything else slows. And of course, the body and the mind have a very intimate relationship, as we know. As the bodily functions slow down, the mind slows down. And this is a nice practice to do if you have a problem, right? Instead of it being a whole sort of chaotic mess in your mind and you're full of panic, you make maybe some decisions in that state of mind that you would regret later. You take some time just to pause, pull back, breathe, analyze, and strategize. And quite often from that state of peacefulness, at least some solution, it may not be perfect, arises. So I'm going to start speaking on the subject of the mind, because it is a tricky subject. It is a tricky energy, and often we don't navigate it very well at all. Just humor me for a second and consider the response I would get if I was to ask a room full of people, do you know how to have a good time? And everybody say, yeah, sure, I know how to have a good time. Jayadharma, I know how to have a good time. And I do this and I do that. And the guy at the back says, I do this. And the lady down the front says, I like to do this. Everybody has their own idea, and everybody is looking for a good time because that's what we're hardwired to do. Have you ever noticed that? Unless you're a bit odd, practically speaking, everybody is looking for happiness, right? So we're all trying to find it in one avenue or another. But you might be surprised to know that the transcendentalists, the yogis, those who have actually realized, who are actually living and experiencing the highest form of yoga, They have perfected the yoga system. They are actually experiencing the highest form of happiness. They look upon our efforts at happiness and they're a bit concerned. They shake their head and they think, guys, you could do so much better than what you're doing. You could do so much better. You've put the bar so low, right, on your anticipation, on your levels of happiness. You can ramp it up. And if you want to find out, right, you can approach such an individual and they will tell you. They see that many of us, we feel that happiness is when we take our senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our genitals, and we place them in contact with the object of the senses. And there's some agitation there. They see that we feel that this is not only pleasurable, which it is, but it is also happiness, which it is not. And you think, well, what? That's a bit unusual. There is undoubtedly pleasure in the senses. You know, the taste buds, the eyes, the ears, and the nose, everything, right? It's pleasurable, but it's very shallow, it's very fleeting, and it doesn't satisfy. It doesn't satisfy at all. How do you know that? Well, many of us, at least in the West, we have, full-on access to sense pleasures, and many of us have experienced it in all forms, perhaps many times, right? And where has it gotten us? It's gotten us to the point where we want more. And so you turn up the volume on the senses, whether it's the ears or what we consume with the eyes, or the food gets spicier and all the sexual stuff gets weirder, right? If you want to really know what is the outcome of this attempt at happiness, which has a name, it's called hedonism, then you ask somebody who is really good at it, right? You ask the Russell Brandts of this world, right? You know, Mr. Brandt, like when he was in his heyday, maybe 5-8 years ago or so, right? He really had the world at his feet. He had a lot of fame, a lot of money, right? And he was going for it in terms of the senses. He was really looking for pleasure because that's what we do. And he had, all the money, all the fame, all the women, all the alcohol, all the drugs, all the experiences, all the cars, everything. And in the midst of that, he would later tell people in interviews that he was almost suicidal. And of course, if you don't know who Russell Brand is, maybe you're a bit older like myself, right? You just have to hark back to the late 70s and the Rolling Stones. And dear old Mick, bless his heart, Mick Jagger, he sang of his dissatisfaction in that famous song. And of course, Mick Jagger, he was, even more polished a hedonist than Russell Brand. The yogis, they see that in many cases we feel that just the removal, the diffusion of pain and suffering is a form of happiness. It is and it isn't. You walk barefoot in the beach or someplace, right? And you walk on glass or a very sharp shell or a nail or some sort of hypodermic needle or something like that becomes buried in your foot. It's very, very painful. You have to visit a doctor and you might be limping around for weeks. And when it heals, you feel great relief and you're happy. And of course, you're happy that, that things have healed and you can get on with your life. But that sort of happiness is just annulment of the negative. It is not the positive happiness that we need, right? Finally, there's the biggie, the so-called love, the so-called I'm in love experience. And the yogis look upon this modern day acceptance of essentially what is known as a set of physiological and psychological symptoms, you know, associated with a new relationship as being in love, they look upon that and they scratch their head. Guys, that is not true love. We all know what we're talking about. You know, you get into a new relationship, you have a heightened sense of excitement, awareness, expectations, yeah, physical symptoms, the pitter-patter of the heart, etc., etc. Now, that may lead to something more meaningful, but often they don't, as we all know, right? Real love is more akin to, you know, a mother and a child, especially a small child. They don't care if the kid pees on them, poos on them. They don't care. You've got an ugly face. And what do they say? A face only a mother could love. They don't care if they grow up to be, you know, really antisocial and do all sorts of weird things and kill people and stuff. Still the mother kind of is fully attached to the son or the daughter. Right? That's getting closer. Why is it that the yogis, they don't make value judgments, they don't make moral judgments, they're not like that, right? Their whole game, the whole game of yoga is to achieve satisfaction, achieve happiness, right? They're good time Charlies, right? Why is it that they feel we could, you know, up the ante on our happiness attempts? Because they know that all that other stuff we just talked about, with the exception of the mother and the child, right, is all on the mental and the physical level. Even the mother-child thing is not perfect, right? It's a two-dimensional approach to a three-dimensional issue. The third dimension being you. You, me. Yes, the witness of the mind, that silent witness of the body as it grows and matures and ages. Yeah, you might or may not know that, you know, within a year, 98% of the cells in your body change, and within 2.5 years, pretty much at tops, the whole thing has changed. Right? So you take a photo. I'm speaking this in 2020. Right? You take a photo on your phone, you hold it in your hand, and you look at it. A photo from, say, 2017 or 18. The eyes you're looking with are not the same eyes that you're looking at. The hand that's holding the phone is not the same hand in the phone, in the photo in the phone. No. It might look similar. Of course, it looks similar, but it's completely different. But if you're following my train of thought, you know that you existed in 2017, 18, and now you know that you exist in 2020. But that body has changed completely. The same with the mind. You look at the mind. Somebody is viewing the mind. Right? This third dimension is that entity and that energy. And that energy is known as antimatter or spiritual energy. And just as your mind and your body have certain needs, yeah, your body needs clothing, it needs medication, it needs food. Your mind needs discipline, it needs engagement. These physical and mental bodies that we have needs. So too do you, the spiritual living being within. I'm not going to get too much into that at the moment because the focus of today's short talk is more akin to the mind, right? As I said earlier, the mind is really a product. It is the fruit of what has been fed into it through the senses. That's pretty simple to understand, yeah? You know, you watch a scary movie of a nighttime. You don't let your kids watch scary movies of a nighttime because what happens? They have bad dreams, nightmares, and they get you up in the middle of the night. And even if you're an adult, you've got to be really careful. Right? You got to be really careful. There is a very great need for us guys to start to, you know, if you're watching this channel, you're pretty much a thoughtful individual, right? There's a great need for us to investigate this subject matter of my true identity, right? I'm not going into great detail here, but there's links associated with this video that you can take it further. We really need to sort of try and understand this and act on it. There's a great need for us to pull back from the mind, to witness the mind for what it is, to ask ourselves honestly and frankly, are my thoughts, are my opinions, my standpoints, are my so-called personal set of values, are they really mine? Or have external influences infiltrated my mind and, in a sense, conditioned it in a particular way? And of course, that is definitely the case. We don't live in a bubble. We live in an environment where we're subjected to messaging at a greater rate than at any time in human history, thanks to, all the different forms of media. We're receiving all these messages from the media, from the government, from, our schools, our friends, our parents. And they, of course, are shaping and molding the nature of our consciousness. We need to understand this, right? We need to admit that perhaps those forces, those external forces, they don't necessarily have my best, what's the word? I've just forgotten it, right? But they're not trying to look after me, right? They have their own agenda. They have their own agenda, right? They don't have my best wishes at heart. They have their own best wishes at heart. They're trying, in most cases, they want something. They either want your money or they want your following, right? They want something. They want your time, right? And you need to sort of be reflective. You have to be reflective about everything, right, that your senses come into contact with. You have to be reflective. You have to cogitate and consider what I'm talking about. Is this what this guy's saying? Is this got some validity? Right? You should check it. Right? And if you, in fact, feel that there is even a smidgen of truth on what I'm saying, then that will lead you to the conclusion that you need to be careful about what your senses come into contact with, because that forms the fabric of your mindset. Yeah, and it's your mindset that pretty much drives your decision making, and of course it's your decision making that takes you here or there. There is a need for us to understand our true spiritual identity, because how you identify yourself, right, forms the nucleus upon which the entire direction of your life travels down. If you understand, and we all understand, that the goal of life is happiness, right? But if you identify as your physical and mental body only, right, you only identify in that two-dimensional paradigm, then naturally you're only going to be looking in that two-dimensional paradigm to satisfy it, as we have been doing all through this lifetime and previous lifetimes. If, on the other hand, you see some truth in what I'm saying, then perhaps it will just pique your interest in spirituality, right? Because legitimate and authentic spiritual practices, as handed down through the yoga system and their representatives, the great yogis, the spiritual masters, the transcendentalists, those practices, they nourish the living being within. And when you get strong as a living being, when you're nourished, right, you're able to dismiss the mind. Not immediately, it's a gradual thing, right? It's like you get strong, and then the mind's still saying, oh, do this, do that, because the mind is living in the world. We're not living in caves like ancient yogis, etc. No, we're in the world and we're subjected to all this sort of stuff, right? That's why yogis are careful. They're careful with their lifestyles. They don't just go out there and indiscriminately sort of sacrifice themselves on the altar of society and just do whatever, anybody says, right? Because if you're just very loose with your senses, then you come under the control of those who essentially control the objects of the senses, right? Sounds like conspiracy theory? It's not. Well, it is and it isn't. There is a conspiracy out there. People want your thoughts. They want your money. They want your time. They want your loyalty. But should you be giving it to them? Should you be giving it to them? What should I do with my love, my thoughts, my possessions, my heart? And the yoga practices and the yogis and these, yoga masters, they have a very clear understanding of where a person who makes those decisions should be heading, right? And they don't want anything from you. They don't want anything except for you to be happy. But you don't know that. You don't know that yet, right? But if you investigate it, you'll find out. And one of the easiest ways to prosecute this is through the practice of meditation. Because in particular for this dark age that we live in at the moment, right, the practice of mantra meditation. The word mantra, man means mind, and tra means to release, right, to draw away. To release and draw the mind away from all the mundane and all the sort of conditioning, some people would call it programming, social engineering, that we've been subjected to for lifetime after lifetime. The mantras also directly, because they're pure spiritual energy, right? They're a manifestation of the universal love, right? They're a manifestation of the source of that universal love, our supreme friend. They allow us to hook up to that source of love and comfort and shelter. And these are the things that we're all searching for. So, I think I'll leave that there. If you're still there, we'll just spend a short while doing some mantra meditation. I'll just bring up, listening to a tune the other day, and I'll just try and remember the chords. So just get comfortable. Gopala, Govinda Rama, Madana, Mohana, Gopala, Govinda Rama, Madana, Mohana. You can join in too. Govinda Rama, Madana, Mohana, Gopala, Govinda Rama, Madana, Mohana, Gopala, Govinda Rama, Madana, Mohana, Gopala, Govinda Rama, Madana, Mohana. Thank you very much for joining me. If, of course, you have any questions, you're most welcome to leave them, and I promise to get back to you. Namaste, and thank you very much.